Awesome. Hi, guys. My name's Tina Albert, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm incredibly grateful to be here and be sober this evening. And welcome to anybody who might be new or relatively new to Alcoholics Anonymous. Stephen, thank you for asking me to come and share with you guys this evening. And I suppose I should thank my friend Hillary for giving you my phone number. And gosh, if you're new here, I want to welcome you. If I don't say anything else that you hear tonight, I hope you hear that I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think that's the most important thing that I can tell you. And I can assure you that I never thought that I was going to say that when I came in here this time on the 10th day of October in 1984, which means that I celebrated 38 years last October. And gosh, that was not my intention. It was not my intention. Super hard to come in and get and stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous when you're 6. I don't know how I pulled it off. Just kidding, obviously. But I was dying of something called chronic alcoholism when I came in here. And what happened was, you read it, Stephen, when you read, thank you so much for reading the foreword to the 4th edition in our big book. I love that. And I would be remiss, I suppose, if I didn't say something about love and Zoom, although I can assure you I didn't say that a couple of years ago either. I thought I hated it, and I thought it was going to make people lazy and slothful, and it was going to take away from Alcoholics Anonymous and detract from like eyeball to eyeball, knee to knee. I thought, how on earth are we going to carry the message to the still suffering alcoholic when the whole world shuts down? And what I found is that this is as effective, almost as effective for me, because I still get to log into my home group, even though I moved away. It's as effective because what we do is we carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to the still suffering alcoholic, which is like what we're doing here, I think. And sometimes that still suffering alcoholic might be our new friends in the meeting tonight, if we have any. And sometimes that still suffering alcoholic might be somebody with 2 or 3 or 4 decades in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been that person once upon a time, suffering from something that I love to call spiritual arrogance that disallows me the privilege of coming in here and remembering that what I have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And sometimes when life gets super lifey and it feels like my friend Billy Noonan says, like I got 90-mile-an-hour fastballs coming at my face, like I don't want to come in here and tell you guys that I'm dying in your midst. But that's been the case multiple times in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm super grateful for the training that I got from one of those sponsor thingies when I was brand new in here. And gosh, I love this deal. I can assure you, Clancy used to say that Alcoholics Anonymous does very slowly what alcohol used to do super quickly. And I can assure you that what I have found as a result of coming and staying in here is more than a sufficient substitute for my drinking and extracurricular party activities, shall we call them. Normally, I like to call them condiments because everybody likes a little ketchup and mustard with their hot dog, but that's all I'm going to say about that. And I'm supposed to share with you in a general way, super grateful for the general part, what I used to be like and what happened and what I'm trying to be like today. Not what it used to be like. We all know what that is, but I get to share my personal experience, strength, and hope with you. And what I used to be like was Dr. Silkworth describes me perfectly in the doctor's opinion as restless, irritable, and discontented. You can sing along with that part if you like, if you know the words, and I would assume that most of us in here do. Restless, irritable, and discontented, like odd, not a part of, not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, didn't fit in, didn't know how to do all of the other things that my friends seem to know how to, my friends, I shall call them, that everybody else in the world seemed to know how to do naturally. And I didn't know how to do any of those things. And what I found out when I came here this time and started going through our literature and taking the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is that what I suffered from long before I ever picked up a drink of alcohol was what Dr. Silkworth describes as a spiritual malady, right? I suffered from this soul sickness. I think I have to ingest alcohol to suffer from alcoholism, but I had that spiritual disconnect long before I ever picked up a drink of alcohol. And what seemed to happen to me once I picked up a drink of alcohol is all of that stuff seemed to melt into the background. But before that happened, reading my literature, what I learned I suffer from is something called self-centered fear, right? Fear that I'm going to lose something that I possess or fail to gain something that I demand. I'm completely self-consumed. And if I'm not thinking about me, I'm wondering what you're thinking about me, like how what you're doing is going to affect me. Like I'm an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. And that's at like 5, 10, 15 years old. And I'm not suffering from alcoholism. I'm just consumed by self. And I was raised in a little upper middle class beach community in Southern California, full of a bunch of little girls that were 5 feet tall with long flowing blonde hair and pretty blue eyes and surfer chick tans. And I'm from West Virginia. Get me talking for a minute and I start twanging. Hi there, Jerry. I get a little twang when I listen to you guys talking on Zoom, for crying out loud. And I've got long, stringy, reddish hair, buck teeth, and freckles. And I look at all these little girls and see prepubescent Pamela Andersons, and I feel like Pippi Longstocking on crack. Like I am just weird. You know what I mean? And I don't fit in. I'm not a part of. I lovingly say that. I would sit around the dinner table with my brothers and sisters and know that my mom loved them way more than she loved me. And I'm an only child. So that further gives you a peek into the way that my brain works, man. Like I just think about me all the time. And when I was in the 7th grade, my best friend Carrie and I decided that we were going to cut school and drink scotch. And I didn't have anybody in my life that I could look at the effects that they got from a drink of scotch. But I just went to Carrie's house and we dove into a 5th of scotch that day. We cracked the paper seal off that bottle and I took a nice long big pull off the bottle, no glass, no ice, no mixer, and it burnt all the way down and it burnt all the way up. It burnt when it came out my nose. It was just gross and I hated the scotch. But I watched my friend Carrie take a drink of scotch and something happened to her, like her face got pink and she started giggling and she wasn't worried about getting in trouble for cutting school. And I don't know where I came up with this idea. I think it was born with me. I just knew that if I plugged my nose and I held my breath and I drank that scotch, that it would stay down. And you know what? I was right. If you were just like born with that kind of concept, you might belong in Alcoholics Anonymous too. I think it's like one of those things that God gave me in the book of knowledge that a lot of other people are missing, but it was necessary for me. And I plugged my nose and I drank that scotch. And what happened was precisely what Dr. Silkworth described that was going to happen in 1939, like years before I was born. I experienced come on now, a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a drink. Oh my God, like everything that I thought was broken about me just seemed to melt into the background. And for the first time in my life, I could use it right now. But for the first time in my life, I was able to take a nice long deep breath and exhale. I had no idea. I'd been holding my breath for my entire life until I was able to breathe, man. And that crick in my neck went away and I was like, my shoulders dropped a couple inches. My friend Peg Martin used to say that alcohol made her wittier, prettier, and tittier. And I know what she was talking about. Like, oh my God, I loved absolutely everything about that drink. And obviously I didn't become wittier, prettier, and tittier, but what I do know happened is that extreme self-centered fear seemed to melt into the background. That like just overwhelming sense of self that I was consumed with nonstop just did not seem to matter anymore. And for the first time in my life, I felt okay. And obviously I didn't move out of my mom's house when I was 12 or 13 years old in the 7th grade and move on to Skid Row. But I will tell you that I got drunk at absolutely every single opportunity I had from that day until I got sober on the 10th day of October in 1984. And just to fast forward, because I only have like an hour and 32 minutes, I'm totally kidding, Stephen. Get down, Luna. I just drank and I drank myself into and out of everything that I loved in my life. You said it in your introduction. Like nothing a drink will make any better and absolutely nothing a drink can't make any worse, right? Like that was my experience drinking Scotch whiskey. And my favorite was Jack Daniels. I love Jack Daniels so much. My first husband was even named Jack, for crying out loud. I mean, maybe it was a coincidence and maybe it was one of those odd or God moments, but whatever. Like, I love the effect that I get from that drink of alcohol, and I'm willing to drink myself into and out of everything that I love. I'm willing to trade everything that I love for just one more moment of a sense of ease and comfort that I get from taking a drink of Jack Daniels whiskey. And I drank myself into and out of middle school, high school, continuation school, the United States Navy, don't judge me, a rehabilitation program in Philadelphia, psychiatric unit in Anchorage, every single local city municipal jail in the South Bay of Southern California. I spent a little time in what I lovingly refer to as Sybil's Home for Wayward Women. And since you guys aren't from LA, I will tell you that that is LA County Jail for women. And I just drink and I do dastardly, horrible things that make me hate myself. And then I wake up with this guilt and this shame and this remorse that nothing extinguishes but Jack Daniel's whiskey. And I drink until I can't drink anymore and something physically separates me from liquor. And the very first opportunity I get to drink one more time, I'm off and running, seemingly against my own will, when everything in me is screaming, oh my God, kid, don't do this. And I'm doing it anyway. Because what happens is I lack the power of choice when it comes to a drink. And I'm not somebody that will tell you that I believe insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I am perfectly clear, y'all, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, knowing exactly what's going to happen, but I lack the power of choice. I lie to myself, and somehow I lie to you too. And then I pick up a drink and I'm off and running again when it is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to me and for me. But I make that insane second step sober decision time after time after time to resume drinking, seemingly whether I want to or not. And I drank myself through high school. I accidentally ended up in the United States Navy, and not really accidentally. I was enlisted to be in naval intelligence, which should frighten you guys just a little bit. And I went to boot camp in 1981 and A school in 1982. I had top secret special intelligence security clearances, and my first duty station was Adak, Alaska, because it was 1982 and Cold War era, and we were spying on Russia. And I'm secretary to the commanding officer of the Naval Security Group on this little Aleutian island off the Kamchatka Strait in Russia. And I'm drinking Long Island iced trees and Jack Daniel's whiskey and cracking beers and taking them into the shower with me, like drinking seemingly against my own will. And I got in a lot of trouble on that island. I found myself on Antabuse. I drank on Antabuse only 4 times. My sober brother, Frank Jones, used to say, if you're going to be an alcoholic, you can't let looking bad stand in your way. You just got to drink right past that. And I drank on Antabuse 4 times, one of which necessitated a visit to the psychiatric unit in Anchorage, where they kept me for a couple weeks, and I left there completely observed, I promise, with a recommendation that I be discharged from the military. And I got to tell you guys, like, I love being in the military. I love serving my country. I love my job. I loved absolutely everything about it. The only problem is that by this time, like, I drink whether I want to or not. And I'm seemingly like without power of choice when it comes to a drink. And every single day I wake up in the morning and I swear I'm not gonna. And then every single afternoon, I think I overreacted just a tad and perhaps a beer, because like Coors Light doesn't count. It's almost water anyway. And then I'm drinking and I'm doing the stuff and I'm locked up again. And in 1983, after a failed attempt at a rehabilitation program, they didn't fail, I did. I was discharged from the United States military for chronic alcoholism, and I was just 19 years old. And I swore every single day when I got out of there that I was not going to drink. And then every single day I did. And on the 10th day of October in 1984, I found myself living in a 1971 MG Midget, because, like, I don't think I'm homeless as long as I got a roof over my head. It was a convertible one with a Serenity, but we shall not talk about that. Like, I'm living in this 1971 MG Midget. I have a trunk in the trunk with all my dirty clothes in it. And I had been kicked out of my mother's house for breaking in and robbing her home and putting my hands on my little 5'1" mom in an inappropriate fashion because she caught me and she threw me out of her house and told me, don't you ever come back here. My only daughter's dead. And I thought, like, I'm never going to tell another living human being that story, right? Like, who does that? Like, my mom loved me more than life itself. Like, she would have died in order to protect me. And I'm selfish and self-centered to the core of my being. And the only thing that I care about is where I'm going to get another one. And I break into her house and I steal her toaster. Why? Who the heck knows? But now I have a toaster in the passenger seat. I mean, the den of my 1971 MG Midget, like, whatever. I don't know why I needed the toaster. I stole the toaster. And I'm sitting in the driver's seat of this MG Midget. I've been homeless for about 6 months. I have that acrid stench that takes months to wash out of your pores. And just like he was sitting in the passenger seat next to me, I heard this little counselor that I had when I was in the rehabilitation program tell me, kid, if you ever want to get sober, call Alcoholics Anonymous, but you won't, you'll die drunk. I can tell you that I had been to Alcoholics Anonymous in Florida in 1982. I had been to Alcoholics Anonymous in Alaska in 1982. I had been to Alcoholics Anonymous in Philadelphia in 1983. And this time, October 10th of 1984, I heard that guy and I heard him say, if you ever want to get sober, call AA, but you won't, you'll die drunk. And I did the best first, second, and third step I've worked in 38 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't even know I was doing it. I knew sitting in that car with a stolen 1.75 liter bottle of cheap vodka in the passenger seat that I was going to drink that vodka, and every single thing in my being told me I didn't want to. Like, everything in my body was screaming, don't drink the vodka. And I knew I was going to drink the vodka anyway. And I knew there was a really good possibility I was going to drive my car. I might injure myself or somebody else. I might wake up in jail one more time and not remember how I got there. I might wake up with your husband or your wife. You guys probably did that too. Like, I do stuff. I do stuff when I'm under the influence of alcohol that I would never, ever do in a sober state of mind, that I was not raised to do, which goes against every single moral fiber in my character. But I do those things anyway, because once I take a drink, there's no brakes on my engine. I got no governor, and I'm drinking until alcohol is done with me, not the other way around. And on this day, I knew I couldn't drink the vodka, and I knew I couldn't not drink the vodka. That's a quandary. I used to think the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous said, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And I asked Clancy to sponsor me 101 years ago. And what he told me was that there's no and in step one, brainchild. I was like 23 years sober and I was aghast, like, excuse me? And what he said was, there's no and in that step, there's a dash, which means end of one thought, beginning of a new thought. So we admit we're powerless over alcohol simply means that we can't drink successfully. Like, people have been telling me that my whole life, only what they said was, kid, you can't drink. And I would think, oh, contraire, like, yes, I can. And I do it really good. But what Clancy said is, I can't drink successfully, dash, like the end. That my life has become unmanageable simply means that I can't not drink successfully either. Now, that's a sticking point, right? That in and of itself is something that will propel me into some willingness to look at a power greater than myself in step two. Because if I'm not like beaten into a state of reasonableness, there's no way that I'm going to do that. There's nothing that's going to propel me into step two unless I get that under the lash of alcoholism. I'm driven to Alcoholics Anonymous, and there I understand the fatal nature of my situation and I become willing, right? That is what propels me into that step. But sitting there that day, I knew I was going to drink the vodka whether I wanted to or not. And I thought maybe those people in Alcoholics Anonymous might be a power greater than myself that might be able to help me not drink that vodka. And I made a decision to turn myself into Alcoholics Anonymous. That was my first, second, and third step. I didn't get down with a power greater than myself. I didn't get on my knees and humbly ask anything. Like, I just knew that I was going to die living in that 1971 MG Midget, and maybe those AA folks might be able to help me not do that for a minute. And I turned myself into you guys, and I went to 4 meetings every single day. I lived in the parking lot behind the Alano Club because I had nowhere else to go. And I got one of those sponsor thingies that you guys talked to me about, because every single one of those 4 meetings a day that I went to, you guys would go, got a sponsor, I'll be your sponsor. Let me get you a sponsor. You want to go talk to Erwin? Come on, have a sponsor. What about Karen? What about, like, oh my God. So I got a sponsor so you'd shut up. Not because I wanted to take the steps and have a personality change the vision to bring about recovery from alcoholism. Like, that was not what I was looking for. I just wanted you to shut up. So I asked this old guy named Paul Matson to be my sponsor, because you guys said men with men, women with women, and you're not telling me what to do. So you told me the men would pat my butt and the women would save it. So I asked Paul to be my sponsor. Really? Because I was 20 years old and I thought I could work him for a tank of gas and some cigarettes. That is the only reason I asked that guy to be my sponsor. And what happened is, like, that nice, loving, gentle, funny old guy that I asked to be my sponsor one day turned into this mean, cantankerous, feeling hurting jackass with his foot straight up my backside the next. And I, Jerry, do not quite know how that happened, but like, it was magic. I think you guys sent him to Clancy Sponsor School in Los Angeles, where they teach you how to be insensitive jerks. And Paul must have graduated, I swear to God, at the top of his class. He had this funny Shakespearean English accent, even though he was from Inglewood, California. And he wore bandanas and turquoise jewelry and carpet purses. And he was this old eclectic hippie from the 60s. And the truth is that funny little old man was able to, like, cut through the BS that I, like, looked through living my life. He was, for some reason or another, able to raise his voice just a little bit louder than the noise in my head. And here's the truth. I had just enough respect for that funny little old guy that I would have done absolutely anything he asked me to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing. I just wanted that funny little old man to look at me one time and say, I'm proud of you, baby girl. And you know what happened is, he taught me. He didn't drive by mandate. He showed me by example what it looked like to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he didn't go like, these are the 4 meetings you're going to go to. He went, this is where we're going to go on Tuesday, baby girl. And he would pick me up and he would take me to the meeting. And I worked at his art gallery, and he became the father that I never had and the sponsor that saved my life. And oh my goodness, I love that old man so much. He passed away on the 10th day of October in 1986 on my 2nd anniversary in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I can tell you is that every single thing that I do today, 38 years later, that holds me in good stead as a member in good stead of Alcoholics Anonymous, I learned from that funny little old man in the first 90 days that I was sober. Like, we didn't go through all the steps and have a personality change and all that niftiness in 90 days, but he taught me how to show up, suit up and show up. He taught me how to show up where I said I was gonna, when I said I was gonna be there, and do what it is that I said that I was gonna do. And he taught me how to go to meetings every day and carry the message. He taught me how to quit dropping the F-bomb from the podium when I didn't want to. And he taught me how to quit dressing like a little hooker in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I would come in mini skirts and low-cut shirts and flash dance hair and clip clop all over the place because I needed your attention more than I needed your program. And he would push me back down into my seat and tell me, you will respect a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and how dare you? Like, excuse me? I got up to the podium one time to share, and he stood up. I said, I'm Tina, I'm an alcoholic. And he said, that's all you know, sit down now. And I was like, what? And then I had 30 days sober, and I'm going to share my brilliance, because I've been to psychiatrists and psychologists and rehabilitation programs and abuse, and of a cutting edge new information on alcoholism that you old cronies clearly missed when you sobered up with Moses, for crying out loud. And I'm going to share the information with you. And I get up to the podium, and he stands up and says, you're finished now. And I look at all my old timers that are sitting on the other side of the room, and I'm thinking, like, you guys said you were going to let me until I learned to love myself. Are you going to let him talk to me like that? And you guys are going, I swear to God, I was going to turn him into New York and pull his sponsor card, because clearly he failed one of those damn lessons, you know? And what I learned how to do was sit down and shut up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned how to dress appropriately because I would walk in dressed like a hooker, for lack of a better term. And he would say, would you wear that to church? And I'm like, well, no, sir, but it's Friday and there's a dance. And he said, I'll be damned if your words of mine don't change your clothing. And I'm like, I've never had a man go tell me to put more clothes on in my whole life. Like, I do not even know what to do with that. And I'm mad. Like, it's not even a lesson that I want to learn. But I go out to the trunk and I change my clothes, and I realize, because I'm your greeter, and he made me stand at the door and shake all your stupid little old wrinkled hands. And I realize a couple weeks later, like, I know your name. And I realized a couple of weeks later, like, Stephen, I'm shaking your hand and I'm making eye contact with you, where 2 weeks ago I was staring at the ground and I knew what kind of shoes everybody in the meeting wore. And I had no idea that by that old man making me change my clothes, he was teaching me how to carry myself with a little bit of grace and dignity in Alcoholics Anonymous. And more than that, he was teaching me how to view myself in a way that I had never viewed myself before. Like, what he taught me was that what I thought that I had a value when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous had nothing to do with what my value was. And while I love the women in Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to tell you, those old guys that were in the Alano Club that I got sober at in 1984 taught me a most valuable lesson. And what they did was they demanded that I allow them to treat me like a lady, and I didn't know how to do that. And I will be forever grateful for that. I got to tell you that changed not only my life, but the way that I viewed myself also. And that is a precious gift that nobody can ever take away from me. I'm so grateful for that old guy. And we went through the steps. He passed away in 1986, and I got this lady to sponsor me for a bunch of years. And I swear to God, she went to Clancy's school too. She was just this cantankerous old wench. And I loved her. What she did was she taught me so many different things about a power greater than myself that I was unwilling to look at when I was new. And Paul was an atheist / agnostic, and so was I. And the truth was, I didn't get this until after he passed away and I became open to a new experience. Like, it was never that I didn't believe in God, although that's what I told everybody that would listen and most of you that wouldn't. Like, it was a very important message for me to get across to you, that when you talked about God, like, I'm not interested in that. And what Connie taught me was that it was never that I didn't believe in a power greater than myself. It was that I had done some things and been some places that made me believe that that power didn't so much believe in me. And rather than try and form a relationship with a power greater than myself that it was too late to have anyway, why try? And that was the narrative like I carried for a lot of years in Alcoholics Anonymous. And unfortunately, sometimes I still do. Like, I am self-reliant and self-sufficient to the nth degree. I'm a chapter 4 girl in our big book, We Agnostics. I suffer from failed self-reliance and fancied self-sufficiency. And the truth is, like, I have today a lot of faith in a power greater than myself, but my own self-will and my own inability to surrender to the power oftentimes has a working relationship with that power completely off the table because I'm busy trying to do that power's job. Like, I love the fact that no matter how long I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's always lessons to learn. And I can tell you, because I'm kind of running short here, that over the course of 38 years, like, I've had incredible relationships and experiences with the power. And I'm a seeker. And I look all over the place for the power, you guys. I'm in the Catholic Church, and I'm in a Jewish synagogue. I'm in a Native American sweat lodge. I read tarot cards, and I love crystals, and I burn sage. Like, I'm an old hippie seeker. And the bottom line is that deep down inside every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of that power. And I spent a lot of years in Alcoholics Anonymous trying to define and comprehend that which my literature tells me that I can't. But I think what's super important is for me to define and comprehend what that power is not. And then it's like Michelangelo, right? When he's carving David, like, he didn't carve David, he carved away all that wasn't David. And so when I can chip away all that is not the power, I'm left with the power. Like this ultimate, all-knowing, super intelligent, loving, and forgiving. And even when I don't think so, all-knowing power that, regardless of what I know, loves me and is always on my side regardless. It's like when I was a little girl and I would get super mad at my mom, and I would be horrible to my little mom, my poor little mom, like I was a monster. And my poor little mom, I was awful to her. And it did not matter, you guys, what I did to that poor woman, break into her house and steal her toaster, whatever, put my hands on my little 5'1" mom in an inappropriate fashion that made her afraid of her big 5'10" daughter and throw me out of her house. Doesn't matter what kind of dastardly actions I took towards that woman. She just loved me anyway. And as soon as I became willing to be just a tiny bit reasonable, she opened the door always to me. And that's my experience with the power. I learned that in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous with a lot of years sober. Married to the Prince Charming in my fairy tale with these two amazing little boys that I love more than life itself, and they're teenagers. And teenage little boys do dastardly teenage little boy things. Duh. And my oldest son, Matthew Paul, I named him after my first sponsor. Matthew means gift from God, and Paul was Paul's name. And so I named my son Matthew Paul. He was born on October 13th of 1987, just 3 days after my 3rd anniversary in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had him by myself because I didn't want a man, I just wanted the baby, you know. So I went about making one all by myself. And I had a kid. I have this little boy and I just love him so much. And I married the Prince Charming in my fairy tale. He's Maddie's dad now. Like, we have another little boy. We're living the dream in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because I'm super creative, I gave my eldest born to the United States Navy as my 9th step amend. I can help you with that if you want after the meeting. Just ask me. I'm really good at coming up with stuff. But Matthew's delayed entry in the United States Navy's getting ready to take off for boot camp. He's enlisted to be in Navy Special Forces. He's going to be a electrician's mate on the Swift boats that serve the United States Navy SEALs. And he's getting ready to go to boot camp, and he got in trouble. He got drunk and he drove into a gated community and he crashed a bunch of stop signs and knocked over their street signs. And they have video of him going through the gate, and he's in trouble. He just does a dumb little boy thing and he's in trouble. And the cops are involved. The homeowners association is involved. Everybody's involved, and he's getting ready to lose his contract. And here comes super mom, right? Da, 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 like, like I will fix anything. I got to tell you, I love this little boy. I don't care what it takes. I'm fixing that. And it doesn't matter what he does or how much trouble he's in. I'm fixing it for him. I love him. I'm going to protect him. I'm going to make sure that he has absolutely everything he could possibly ever need to have like a life beyond his wildest drunken dreams. Like, I'm fixing it all. And I did that. And in the process, what I realized, I was listening to this cassette tape of Chuck Chamberlain. I'm sorry, a CD of Chuck Chamberlain. And Chuck Chamberlain used to get up. He would say on the CD, I get up every day and I say, it's me, Dad, and I'm reporting for duty. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, what if this God that you guys talk to me about ad nauseum in Alcoholics Anonymous, the power, is nothing more than my father or my mother or my whatever? What if this power like loves me as totally and completely and fiercely and protectively and unconditionally as I love that little boy? And what if this power would do absolutely anything in its power to make sure that I have everything that I could possibly need to live a life that's full of happy, joyous, and free? And my fight went away. It's not to say over the course of the last 15 years or whatever it's been that fight hasn't come back, because it comes back a lot, you guys. The one thing that holds me in good stead in Alcoholics Anonymous is that I, to the absolute best of my knowledge and ability, have never said no to a legitimate Alcoholics Anonymous request. And if my calendar is open, it's yours. I will do absolutely anything that I'm asked to do in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I will show up and do it to the absolute best of my ability, whether I think I'm able or not. Oftentimes I log on to a meeting or I go someplace to talk and I think like, clearly you guys meant to call Tammy P. I'm Tina A. Like, wrong one, but you got me. So here I am. Or I go like, oh my goodness, I know Deb would do a way better job. Like I'm not qualified. I don't think I can. It's not convenient. I got something else to do. And then what I do is I just say yes anyway. Uh-oh, there's somebody at my door. I just say yes anyway, and then I show up and I do my absolute best. Hang on one. Now I forgot where I was and I have to start all over again. My name's Tina and I'm an alcoholic. I'm just kidding. But what I do is I just show up and I do my absolute best. And what I've learned is that God oftentimes doesn't call the qualified. He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies those he called. That's where I was going with that. Like I just show up and I do my absolute best to give you my best, because that's what you've always done for me. And I've had an incredible life in your midst, incredible life in your midst. And the last couple of years, as I know it's been for a lot of people, has been super difficult. I hate this part because this is the part that makes me snot all over the computer and cry. The last couple of years have been difficult. Like I was sponsored by Clancy for 13 years. I love that funny old man. I know a lot of people don't. I don't care. I do. And I asked him to sponsor me when my marriage was ending and I was like suicidal in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, like hanging on to what I thought was mine and trying to wrest satisfaction out of the world if only I can manage well. And I went to Clancy and he gave me some actions to take that, quite frankly, I was already doing. But the difference is, like, I would continue to take the actions, but they weren't my idea anymore. And I was accountable to that funny little old guy. And he saved my life when I was 23 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I spent the next bunch of years sitting to the left hand of the Father because Johnny Harris sat to the right, whatever. And we all, like, there were so many of us that are like, you know, I'm Clancy's favorite. And we all say that, but I really was. And God, I love that guy. And he was sick for a little while. And then on the 24th day of August in 2020, just happened to be a Monday, he passed away. I got the call, his daughter called me, and we knew it was coming, but you can never quite be prepared for that. But he passed away. And then accidentally on Wednesday, I asked Sharon Crane to be my sponsor. And I wasn't going to ask Sharon because she sponsors 9,742 women with a lot of estrogen, and it's just not my jam. But I accidentally asked Sharon to sponsor me on Wednesday, the 26th. On Friday, the 28th, we had made the decision to sell my mom's house because she had a little form of rapidly progressing dementia. And I got to be her caretaker until the day that she passed away. And we sold our homes and moved in together. And I spent just about 24 hours a day with my mom for the last 2 years before she died. And that's a far cry from the little rat that she was presented with on the day that I was born. Like, that is something that you guys turned me into, and an ability that you guys gave me to show up for that woman, regardless of how I felt and how she acted. And I'm super grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, as was she. She was your greatest advocate and your greatest proponent, and they barely ever stepped foot in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when somebody would say something about AA, she would go, "You stop it right there, because you don't know my daughter. You didn't know my daughter." And I got to show up and be the daughter she deserved instead of the one she was presented with. And we listed her house in order to move up here and do that thing. And 6 hours and 15 minutes later, my son was in a horrible motorcycle accident when I was brand new in Alcoholics Anonymous. And Paul told me if I was to quit drinking, I couldn't have any lurking notions or reservations. Someday I'm going to be able to drink successfully again. And if I had any, what would they be? I remember telling him, if anything happened to my mom, I'm drinking. And if I'm ever presented with a child and something happens to that baby, I got to go. And on August 28th, which ironically should have been Maddie's 6-year anniversary in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm so grateful for those 6 sober years that we got to trudge commence shoulder to shoulder on this common journey and be best friends and trudging buddies in Alcoholics Anonymous. He was in this accident and he lived for 69 days in the surgical ICU unit in Santa Clara Valley Medical Center. And I showed up there every single day. And I made decisions that no parent should ever have to make for their child. And I watched them carve pieces off of my son for 69 days until his body could no longer tolerate what they were doing to him. And on the 4th day of November, as I was leaving the hospital, I told him, if you have to go, I understand and it's okay. And I left the hospital. I called Sharon and I said, I think the last thing that I'm ever going to get to say to my son was a lie, and I don't know what to do with that. And what she had been telling me for the longest time is all of these women that are in her sponsorship lineage are carrying me through the impossible. What she told me was, when Maddie's done fighting, you'll know. And until that moment, you'll fight for him until he can't anymore. And on the 4th day of November, I gave him permission to go home. And on the 5th day, I got to walk in there. And in the midst of this like impossible tragedy and the thing that I was absolutely certain I wasn't going to be able to stay sober through, in the event that had happened, like I watched two things happen at the same time. I watched my heart break in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous with a loss that I didn't think that I was going to be able to fathom. And I watched on a minute by minute basis the people in Alcoholics Anonymous just show up and patch the heart. And one of Sharon's like, she's so spiritual and whatever, I think she should be like Gandhi or Mother Teresa for a minute. And she goes like, watch the gold flakes as they're swirling around your feet in the waves of life. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But what she says oftentimes is that broken hearts heal bigger. And sometimes my heart has to break in order for the light to get in. And so it's been just over 2 years since we lost my son. And I've watched the people in Alcoholics Anonymous show up for me in ways that I didn't even realize I was able to let them, because that's the truth. It's never whether you guys are going to show up for me, because you always do. 38 years worth of experience shows me that. But the big question is, somewhere in my heart of hearts, there's this idea that I don't deserve you guys to show up for me. And I'm super good at showing up for you, but I don't know how to receive. And so I suppose the lesson in the last couple of years is how to stand firm in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous and let you do for me what I've done for you for 38 years. And it's the hardest lesson, gosh, that I've ever learned. But I love the steal. And if there's anybody new or not new, if there's anybody in here like dying of alcoholism, right in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, like this thing works today for me the exact same way that it worked on the 10th day of October in 1984. And I've walked through this series of surrenders where I think I'm all in, and then all of a sudden I realize I'm not, and there's another layer of surrender right around the corner. I know there was going to be another one 6 months or a year from now. Like, what holds me in the best stead in Alcoholics Anonymous is always my willingness to go all in. And so if you're new in here, or if you're not and you're struggling, like, I pray that you stay with us and you just go all in. The greatest gift that I've ever been afforded in my life is to become the woman that you guys dreamed me into being, because none of this is of my own doing. Like, I think you guys looked at this broken little feral homeless girl in 1984, and you like saw possibilities in me that I couldn't possibly see in myself, and you breathed everything that I am into my very being. And I can never repay Alcoholics Anonymous for the life that you've given me, but I promise to spend every day that I have left trying. So Stephen, thank you so much for asking me to come and be with you guys this evening. And it's been an honor.